Westbury now. And one resident there, Melo du Plessis, says the time's come for people there to stand together and take back their community from criminal elements. Westbury's been plagued by gang-related violence. There were several deaths there over the weekend. The City of Joburg Speaker, Colleen Makobela, has been visiting families of victims of gang violence. Du Plessis says government must put measures in place to ensure those who speak out against crime are protected.
There was an incident in the street just behind Stateless Street where a priest was a witness in a specific case. And so he was taken out of the game because, and that is what people fear, is that when they do speak, then they will be next. So somehow government needs to come up with a plan to secure people and to make sure that whenever you do speak up, your life will be secured.
Our reporter Ziniko Mhlaba was in Westbury earlier. He joins me now. Ziniko, good afternoon to you. We've seen this kind of tension before. Yeah. People in communities being told they want to stand together, they want to speak out against crime, they want to do something. And yet it's actually very scary.
It's a very scary phenomenon, Stephen, especially in a community like that. The gentleman actually is a pastor. So he's one of the stakeholders who's been assisting community members in terms of counseling them, in terms of engaging with authorities as well. So when we spoke to him earlier on, his first point was that people should reclaim their power. People should take up the arms. People should stand united and fight against this gang violence, because some of the people behind these gangs are actually their sons or their nephews. So it's family members who are behind, who are involved in these activities. But at the same time, his second point is that people actually now are scared, because they get victimized, they get killed. Actually made mention of one pastor who was once who was once a witness in some of these crimes, and eventually he was killed before even those court processes were concluded. So that's the dynamic that people in Westbury are faced with. So they do want to speak out, but the problem is once you speak out, once they know that it's Stephen who gave information to the authorities, they target you and then you get killed sooner or later, and nothing is done about that, and they move on, the community moves on. So that's the problem, that's the risk, that's the fear that they have, that if we speak out, I might be nice, so I might as well keep quiet and mind my own business.
I mean, this is a tension that's existed in communities for decades, I mean, centuries in some parts of our country, perhaps. Are there any suggestions on how to break it, how to break this sort of cycle of fear, how to do something? And it also requires proper policing, let's be clear. You need proper police intelligence on the ground too. So that's another problem, because one activist we spoke to on the ground, and actually also the principal, because the speaker was visiting various sites that actually get affected when this violence erupts. So one of the things that the principal and that activist spoke about is that, yes, we might be looking at the criminal aspect of this problem, but the social issues. People are not employed, people do not have jobs. So these young kids, especially when they are still in secondary schools, they get recruited by these gangs so that they're able to sell whatever drugs those gangs want them to sell at the school. So the school becomes the marketplace. The school becomes a place where these young kids, fellow learners, sell these drugs to fellow learners. So he blames that, he pins that to the levels of poverty in the community, saying that if maybe there can be job opportunities, these young people at schools will not be vulnerable to be recruited by those gangs. So that's one of the problems. But also remember that the school is not far from the JMPD head offices in Johannesburg, just across the street actually. So they're saying that once in a while, officers from JMPD, they do come and patrol, but they cannot be there all the time. And the problem now is that some of these young gangs are within the schools themselves, even though they do not do any shooting within the school parameters, but they target school learners. And if you do not become, or if you do not join any gangs, you become targeted. They victimize you, and eventually you are forced into the system yourself. So that's the problem. So talks to the issues of not having productive or efficient policing systems in place, but also the lack of dealing with social issues that the community generally is facing. And Colleen Makobela, she's the speaker, quite an active speaker, if I may say. I think a strong support in Eldorado Park, if I remember correctly. What is she saying about all of these problems?
So she was basically probing why is it that the schools become targeted. And that's when the principal raised the issue that actually when you talk about schools, you're not talking about just victims. Within the schools themselves, you've got young gangs, you've got these young people who are actually involved in gang-related matters. So the community members, the pastors can come and pray at the same time, but actually the people who are actually problematic within the community are also within the schooling system. So we have to deal with that holistically. You have to deal with young people who are still teenagers within the schooling system, and also you need to deal now with those that are outside school, who are unemployed, who are now doing everything in their power to make sure that they put food on the table. So that was the briefing she was given, and then she did then promise that she'll take it up with the provincial and other spheres of government, so that it is noted, especially when it comes to the socio-economic issues.
Sometimes there can be almost a sense of despair in some parts of these communities, because the problem has been going on for so long. It's very difficult to keep your children away from drugs and gangs, almost impossible in some places. Some people must just feel that this really shapes their entire lives.
So from Westbury, we went to El Dorado Park. That's where it got a bit problematic for us, because as we were driving into the area where we were supposed to meet one of the family members, the mood, the tension, you could feel. You could cut it actually, because there were boys that were just standing along the road, and you would think that at first point that maybe they're just about to play soccer together, but we were informed by some of the group that these young people are very armed. So should any of you take out any camera or any form of a signal that will signal to them that actually we're here to film their stories, we would find ourselves in trouble. So that's how serious that matter is. Even for us as journalists, we had to toe the line very carefully, and then we started operating once we were at a safer place just outside the house we were going to. So that's the problem. And the mother we spoke to earlier on told us that she lost 2 sons in the space of 12 months. One son was gunned down last year in August, and a second son was gunned down in Westbury just this Friday, and she was gunned down alongside his 2 cousins. So a family lost 3 young people just in the space of 12 months. So that's the problem. They do feel as if there's no hope. They feel like they're trapped. They feel like nothing is being done by the authorities to make sure that they're assisted in terms of fighting this problem.
Ziniko Mhlaba, thank you very much indeed. Just, very, very devastating story, difficult story to actually listen to. So many communities in our country facing the same problems.